Pacific Northwest. It started quietly, with a few reports of missing young women, but soon escalated into one of the most terrifying and prolonged serial killer hunts in American history. The center of this storm was the Green River, a serene waterway that became a symbol of horror as bodies started to surface along its banks. The man responsible would haunt the region for nearly 2 decades, a phantom known only as the Green River Killer. His real name was Gary Ridgway. To his neighbors and co-workers, he was just an ordinary guy, a quiet truck painter who lived a seemingly normal suburban life. He was married, went to work, and blended in perfectly. But this facade of normalcy was a carefully constructed mask hiding a monster. Beneath it, Ridgway was a predator, preying on the most vulnerable members of society. His victims were almost all young women, many of whom were runaways, sex workers, or individuals struggling with addiction. He specifically targeted those he believed would be less likely to be missed, whose disappearances might not trigger an immediate, large-scale alarm. This cold calculation allowed him to operate in the shadows for far too long. As the body count rose, so did the public's panic. The discovery of remains became a horrifyingly regular occurrence. Bodies were found in forests, dumped in rivers, and left in remote, desolate areas, often clustered together. The community was gripped by terror. Parents warned their children, and a dark cloud of suspicion hung over the entire region. Who was this killer, and how could he be so prolific, yet so invisible? In response, law enforcement launched one of the largest and most expensive murder investigations in United States history. A dedicated task force was formed, bringing together detectives from multiple agencies. The scale of the operation was immense. Hundreds of potential suspects were questioned, and the task force was flooded with thousands of tips from a terrified public. Every lead was pursued. Every possible angle was explored, but the killer remained a ghost. He was always one step ahead, leaving behind a trail of devastation but few concrete clues. One of the biggest obstacles the investigation faced was the technology of the time. In the 1980s, forensic science was still in its relative infancy. DNA testing, the powerful tool that solves so many cases today, was not yet available in the way we know it. Investigators had to rely on traditional police work, which, in this case, wasn't enough. They collected evidence, including semen samples, but the science wasn't advanced enough to link it directly to a suspect. This technological gap would prove to be the killer's greatest ally, allowing him to evade capture for years. The frustration for law enforcement was immense. They even had encounters with Gary Ridgway himself. He was on their radar early on, considered one of many suspects. He was questioned multiple times. He even failed a polygraph test, a lie detector, which should have raised significant red flags. Yet, despite these close calls, there was never enough evidence to arrest him. He managed to talk his way out of suspicion, maintaining his cover as a regular, harmless man. And so, while the investigation stalled and eventually went cold, Ridgway continued to live his double life, free to carry on with his horrific crimes, hidden in plain sight. For nearly 20 years, the case grew colder. The files collected dust. The task force was downsized, and for the families of the victims, hope for justice dwindled. It seemed the Green River Killer would forever remain an unsolved mystery, a dark chapter in Washington's history. But then, science caught up. By the turn of the millennium, DNA technology had made incredible leaps forward. Forensic scientists could now extract and match DNA profiles from decades-old samples with astonishing accuracy. In 2001, a new generation of investigators decided to revisit the cold case. They took the evidence that had been meticulously preserved since the 1980s and applied these modern DNA testing techniques. They re-examined the biological samples collected from several victims. This time, they got a match. The DNA profile belonged to one of the original suspects, a man who had slipped through their fingers all those years ago, Gary Ridgway. After 2 decades of fear, frustration, and failure, technology had finally unmasked the killer. The arrest of Gary Ridgway sent shockwaves through the community. The quiet truck painter, the man nobody suspected, was the monster they had been hunting for so long. The truth was finally coming to light, but the full scope of his evil was even more horrifying than anyone had imagined. Faced with irrefutable DNA evidence, Ridgway knew he was trapped. To avoid the death penalty, he struck a deal with prosecutors. He would confess to his crimes and lead them to the remains of his undiscovered victims. What followed was a chilling series of confessions. Ridgway admitted to murder after murder, his memory for the gruesome details disturbingly clear. He calmly recounted his crimes, showing little to no emotion. In 2003, he pleaded guilty to an astounding 49 separate murders, officially making him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. And authorities believe the true number of his victims could be much higher, possibly over 70. For his cooperation, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The story of the Green River Killer is a haunting saga of how evil can thrive undetected, hiding behind a mask of ordinary life. It's a story of investigative failure, of a system that was unable to stop a monster in its tracks. But it is also a powerful testament to the relentless pursuit of justice and the incredible power of scientific advancement. For the families of the victims, the resolution brought a